Welcome everyone, today we are in a nice mood. It's kind of not that hot outside, plus now we're talking about something serious, about the meta, the future of the meta of tanks in Mythic Plus for Season 3, so I thought it was a nice moment to go back talking to each other one-on-one. It's been a while since we even bothered to use our camera, so I thought this one was a serious enough point to talk about. It's serious because of course we have gone through a couple of seasons of heavy dominance of a single tank in Mythic Plus, so now it's time to start hoping that the Season 3 tier set changes, for example, could bring something that might move the priority of the next strongest tank one way or another, preferably away from Vengeance Demon Hunter next season. Now, the first a bit disappointing part, which might feel kind of like a spoiler, after raving about the healer tier sets, the tank tier sets are all pretty bad. To me at least, I'm not that much into doing damage as a tank. What I care about the most is who is the tankiest, who can survive the most, who has the strongest defensives, or more importantly, who gains the most damage reduction, which is always, every single time, the strongest thing you can have in Mythic Plus as you keep scaling upward. Flat percentage damage reduction is always the best tool to become very powerful. And unfortunately, all of these tier sets, as we will see, have almost zero defensive power. They all make you do more damage. Now, in some cases, doing some more damage will give you some more resources, which can be translated into casting more defensive abilities. In other cases, casting more abilities to do damage could trigger some of your defensive tools, but every single one of these tier sets does not give you any flat percentage damage reduction, any absorb shield, any chance or increased chance to dodge, parry, block, or any kind of ignoring damage, nothing at all. Just pretty much, primarily, mostly damage increase for all tanks. So the first in line is Blood DK. Blood DK plays only, exclusively, so far at least, with Sun Lane, no matter if it's the Raid or Mythic Plus. So this one already has not much relevance, since it doesn't seem like Blood will move over to the Bringer anyways. Casting Reaper's Mark grants you 2 stacks of Exterminate with more damage of your first and second sight effectiveness. As mentioned at the beginning, this is a pure damage tier set, doesn't actually do anything defensively. 4-piece, Reaper's Mark can now stack up to 15 additional times and will increase your crit chance by 10% after it explodes. So it will go from like 40 to 55 stacks, so it will do some almost 200% more attack power damage, and that's about it. Sure, I guess the 10% more crit chance can also be translated to more parry chance for a Blood DK, but that's about it. Sun Lane is what you play. Infliction of Sorrow extends the duration of your disease by an additional 3 seconds on your main target, which is mostly irrelevant. And Essence of the Blood Queen additionally increases your mastery by 0.8% per stack. Now, mastery, increasing your mastery could be one of the ways for you to get tankier, right? For example, in the case of Vengeance, getting more mastery means you get more armor. Well, I guess it's more like physical damage reduction, right? But for Blood DK, your mastery is just your blood shield. It's just basically getting a slight physical damage absorb shield based on your Death Strike healing. So it's good, it's decent, it will amount to some more physical damage reduction, but you know, the number we are talking about here, Essence of the Blood Queen giving you 0.8% mastery per stack, is not a lot. Especially because I think the Essence stacks up to like 7 times. So this is like a, what, 5% mastery or something. So it's not that great for Blood DK. The 4-piece gets you 4 seconds longer of Blood Beast, you know, damage accumulation and damage of the Blood Beast itself. And Vampiric Strike will increase your melee attack power of Dancing Wound Weapon by 5% for 6 seconds with multiple applications overlapping. So of course you spam Vampiric Strike, you gain 5, 10, 15, 20% more damage to your Dancing Wound weapons. Again, bad if we only care about defensive power, if we only care about staying alive, which is particularly relevant for Blood DK, since one of their biggest weaknesses is getting one-shot at high key levels, because they just don't have the time to heal themselves in between major hits. They would like to get some decent damage reduction, even if it's in the form, for example, of higher parry chance, since they can't block really or dodge. like what made them meta, for example, at the end of Shadowlands. So getting more attack power on your dancing rune weapon is whatever. It's fine for damage, but in terms of staying alive more, you would have much rather this tier set, this 4-piece set bonus, giving you stacking 5% more parry the more you cast Vampiric Strike, for example. So it could have been more significant for your defensive power. But without that, both of these tier sets are mostly just damage increases for Blood Beacon. So Vengeance instead plays primarily with Eldrachi Reaver in Mythic Plus. It plays a Fel's card right now in the raid. Immolation Aura dealing 30% increased damage and Soul Cleave damage by 30% while Immolation Aura is active. Again, is pure damage, it doesn't do anything else. Entering Demon form now immediately induces a Demon Surge and shatters a Demon Soul Fragment that grants 20% increased damage. This is good. It's a good power for you. You do also get more defensiveness because when you enter Demon form and you induce a Demon Surge, you do get more synergy with your Felskar talents, which is kind of good. But again, it's not a particularly tank-centered, defensive-centered hero tier set for Vengeance. The one you are playing, Eldrachi Reaver, Reaver's Glaive damage is increased by 60% and other physical-only damage is increased by 30%. It's practically the same as Felskar, just damage increase. 4-piece, Fury of the Eldrachi will empower your Soul Cleave when you cast it after Fracture or Share, increasing the slashes up to 12. Reaver's Mark now stacks up 3 times and further empowers Fracture Share when cast after Soul Cleave, applying an additional stack for 100% of normal duration. More synergy whenever you're playing the single target version or the AoE version, casting it after Soul Cleave or casting it after Fracture, whichever one of the two, it's just more damage. It's just talents to do more damage and not really much else. So there isn't too much synergy here in terms of tankiness. Guardian Druid, one of the tanks that is a bit further behind right now the curve when it comes to meta. Druid of the Claw is extremely simplistic. Ravage increases your haste by 10%, chance to crit by 10%, and damage of your bleeds by 30% for 5 seconds. This is more relevant because haste and crit chance can also be used defensively. So Ravage can now become a mini cooldown, 10% haste, 10% crit, and 30% more bleed damage every 5 seconds. So it's a bit more relevant defensively for Guardian Druid. And then Ravage has a 40% chance to make you ravage your target again 4 seconds later. The more relevant part of this is that if it happens, then you can extend this. You don't need to cast Ravage yourself, you can just get the extension from the 4-piece and keep up all of these buffs. So this is actually one of the first examples of a more like defensively tooled tier set for a spec for a tank in Druid of the Claw. Now you only need to actually be playing Druid of the Claw in Mythic Plus, which is not exactly happening. Maybe this will be the why. The tier set will be the why. Everyone is chosen. Thrash damage is increased by 20%. Thrash has a 40% chance to launch a Star Surge at your target for free. Pure damage, nothing really defensive here. 4-piece. On impact, the Star Surges that you launched for free by Thrash will also split up to 3 additional targets and will grant you a stack of Gathering Moonlight. When you cast your Lunar Beam, all of the stacks you gathered from Gathering Moonlight will increase your damage by 5% per stack. Again, damage tier set. Keep spamming Thrash. Thrash will proc 3 Star Surges every time you get your Lunar Beam out. You will get some 20-ish% damage increase for 12 seconds from your 4-piece. It's just a damage increase tier set for Guardian Druid and not really much else. Brewmaster. Master of Harmony is what you're currently playing in Mythic Plus as a Brewmaster Monk. Gaining Vitality has an increased chance to cause your next Tiger Palm to unleash the Harmonic Charge, dealing nature damage split between your and nearby targets. Casting Celestial Brew will now guarantee that your next 2 Tiger Palms will trigger this Harmonic Surge AoE splash of damage. A very smooth, we mentioned this for Mistweaver, a very smooth and passive kind of hero talent tier set, which gives you a bunch of power around a cooldown. In this case, sure, a defensive cooldown for Celestial Brew, but ultimately it is still very offensively coded, damage increase coded. For Shadowpan, which is what you're not playing right now, Flurry Strikes deal 30% more damage, again, focused on doing damage, and activating Weapons of Order instantly grants you 10 stacks of Flurry Strikes that trigger on your next attack at full effectiveness. 4-piece, Flurry Charge Generation is increased by double, by 100%, and Flurry Strikes triggers every 120 energy spent during Weapon of Order. Again, more damage. Most of this will just focus on you, the tank, getting more damage, and not a lot else. Not procs for more versatility, damage reduction, mastery if your mastery does give you damage reduction, absorption, chance to dodge, chance to ignore damage. Nothing of the sort, it's just more damage. Also, perhaps feels a little bit off for Brewmaster, since Brewmaster already used to have quite the high damage. Although, in defense of Brewmaster, they have been getting some changes to their hero talent already in 11.2, right? So it is likely perhaps even some of these will change going into the next season, because some of these are quite powerful, especially the sort of changed talent set around New Zhao down the middle seems quite powerful defensively. So at least Brewmaster does have smoothened out damage intake in their talents being changed. So at least, even if it's not here in the hero talents, we do know they have some in their normal talent tree. Question marks to talk about when it comes to Lightsmith, because nobody plays Lightsmith after it has been nerfed 50 times. So they had to play it for a few days because Templar was bugged. Now Templar is no longer bugged, so they can go back playing Templar. So this is a lost cause until they buff Lightsmith. For Templar, your Empyrean Hammer deals, what a surprise, 20% increase critical strike damage, and its crits have a 50% chance to grant an additional stack of Light's Deliverance. You might be wondering, wait a second, I get this now. Light's Deliverance is gonna be some kind of, tanky focused tool? No, Light's Deliverance is the final point in your tree, which allows you to make your Imperial Hammer recastable, your Hammer of Light recastable for free. So it's just more damage, basically. Hammer of Light deals 35% increased damage to its primary target, strikes 3 additional secondary targets, and can now be cast one more time after Eye of Tyr, after your defensive. So again, just more damage. There isn't even anything Paladin gains from doing more damage. It's not that they gain more holy power for doing more damage, or gain more stacking parry chance or block chance for doing more damage. So this is just a purely damage increase tier set for Prot Paladin. The last of the line is also one of the ones that gets changed the most in this patch, Protection Warrior. So Protection is playing now Colossus in both activities. They started out playing much more Mountain Tane, and then Colossus was buffed. So they moved over to Colossus. So Mountain Tane is Thunder Blast has a 35% chance to call down 5 strikes on affected targets, dealing magical damage, nature damage. And these 5 ionizing strikes deal 50% more damage and have 20% chance to grant a charge of Thunder Blast, which can then now give you more chances to spawn these strikes. And the more of them they spawn, the more they have a chance to call down the Thunder Blast, and then the feedback loop will repeat. This is entirely a feedback loop centered around doing damage. As a Prot Warrior, you don't really gain much of anything else from this. The one you are playing, Colossus, demolish damage, what a surprise, buffed by 20%, and critical strike damage of your abilities is increased by up to 20% on targets affected by your demolish for 10 seconds, based on the amount of Colossal Might stacks. 4-piece demolish increases the critical strike chance of your next 2 shield slams by basically a guarantee. And then shield slam crits will increase your rend and deep wounds damage by twice as much for 8 seconds. So what is very relevant here, as we started saying this, is the fact that there is no tank in the tank tier sets. Every single one of these tier sets is almost entirely centered around doing more damage. It does not change much of anything about your tankiness, about the cooldowns you might be using. It doesn't, for example, it's not, for example, a tier set that changes the cooldown reduction of your big cooldowns, or gives you more charges of the cooldowns, or gives you a random chance to proc like we have had in this season, for example. No, it's just a series of damage increases. Just higher tank damage and not much else. There are a few things here and there, but they're very minor, like 10% more crit for blood can turn into parry chance, 10% crit and haste for Guardian Druid can also be used defensively. Some of these doing more damage, generating things like generating more rage. You can use them for more defensive tools like Ignore Pain or generating more rage for Guardian Druid as well. But in terms of defensiveness, in terms of tankiness, these don't do much. And we had an entire video actually around how do you get to be a meta tank, and we mentioned there that while at first glance it might look like you need to have the utility, you need to have the thing like the Vengeance Demon Hunter sigils to make the whole combo around silencing a pack of mobs for 10 seconds, the baseline still of that Vengeance is that it was the tankiest tank to begin with. The one that could survive the most pulls while also having all of that utility. So it would have been quite relevant to see a series of tank-focused tier sets for the tanks, but this is not what we have seen here for today. Most of these tier sets are almost intelligible in their power level because they don't do anything for what you will be looking at your meta tank in Season 3, which is tankiness. Even before looking at the utility, none of these tier sets do mostly anything for the survival rate of your tank. They might do other things like easier snap aggro, even after Blizzard just buffing the threat generation of tanks. Even easier time to have aggro, to keep aggro, even bigger damage boosts for your tank spec, which can still be very useful. But in terms of helping you survive better, these are not really on that level right now for tanks. So the TLDR when we started, which was, is there going to be a tank able to surpass Vengeance right now? Not really. I guess if you really want to look at the glass half full, Season 2, Vengeance had the tankiest tier set. So it was an advantage over the other tanks because their tier set was making them tankier. In this season, their tier set does nothing for tankiness, but also all of the other tanks get nothing from their tankiness in their tier set. But at least it's better being all even than in this season where Vengeance was stronger. So technically, Vengeance will be getting slightly weaker from losing their current season tier set going into this one, but definitely not enough to change the power level of the tanks. So what will be necessary is balance tuning changes, buffs mostly, to the other tanks. For now we have seen some buffs going the way of Brewmaster, which were quite strong overall. Some, I don't think we can call them buffs yet, to Protection Warrior. Some changes going the way of Protection Warrior. It is yet to be seen if these are actually buffs for the spec. But for now, the general guess is still leaning towards Vengeance still being the stronger tank for Season 3. We will see, of course, how all of the development will continue for the tanks for the next season, of course, with the focus being around Mythic Plus, since raid tanks are a much less important thing right now. So, with this said and done, on this Monday, it is now time to leave each other. We're starting as usual the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I'm not sure about these lights. I think 1 was enough, 2 is probably a bit overkill right now, even if it's dark.